Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Haemo-Goblin League. Yay!
Woohoo!
I'm here with
Boom.
Lachlan.
Boom.
We're going to be looking over the second half of season 4, previewing season 5, and doing some predictions. Should we start with season 4? Shall we start with our teams and then go on to the finals and things which we weren't part of? Spoiler warning.
Sure.
Should we start there?
Yeah, that sounds like a place to start.
Should we start with your team, because it's as
bit
quite
weird.
typically for your team, one of the most unique in the league, and probably was the most unique last year if it hadn't been for David.
Yeah.
The most unique and successful team.
Kislev. Yeah. Obviously decided to do them purely because it was double XP in the season. Obviously a late game team. A bit weird, a bit novel. Caused quite a lot of frustration to people along the way. With all the leaping, people not knowing quite how to play against it, and then it was quite fun seeing how people decided to tackle it. I think the most scary counter to all my leaping that I saw in all of it was when I played Matt for the second time, and he made a 9-man cage around the ball. So there was no leaping into that cage. That was a bit gross, but I had a lot of fun with Kislev to the point where I think I'm actually gonna try them in a solo multiplayer league to try and upgrade them over time there, because I think they've got so much potential, and I'm going to really struggle to move back to a normal team after it. It's a shame. They're very good team, a lot of fun. Recommend them to everyone. And if you do ever play them, I'd say get the bear at the end. Don't get the bear early, and you don't need more than 2 blitzers really. that you can cause TV inflation really, really easily, which I think is where I suffered a little bit in the late game with them. But apart from that, though, I think they're very good. Catchers are phenomenal. Doing a 2 square leap on a 2 up roll is it's a lot of fun. Highly recommend them to anyone. Got beaten out when we got to the quarterfinals, by Thomas, and who played very well. I'm sure we'll get on to his particular disgusting player later though, which
Should we? There's an interesting thing with that quarterfinal that almost every other final game has been very tight. There's been the odd blowout where one team's just annihilated another, but those have been quite rare in finals. In any sort of final position. And yours was a 4-3 game.
It's very high scoring.
Yeah, which is high scoring in anything, never mind a final. And I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see that again for a long time, that type of scoreline.
I wouldn't be too surprised either. I mean, the theme that I've tend to see in the when it comes to sort of late game as well is that sort of more attritional teams tend to have got to the final stages, at least in the past. And I think this is an event where we had obviously extreme running in Skaven, and then sort of pseudo elves and Kislev. So I'm almost not surprised it did end up going that high. There
was one more touchdown or one less touchdown in that game than there was in every other quarterfinal and semi-final combined.
We did it, Thomas. We got a record. Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. I'll go over my Chaos team briefly. I think I built them for the wrong meta. I think I tried to build a bit sort of aim very high on the killie and just couldn't keep up with what was a very high-paced league.
There's a fair amount of running in this league. Not a lot of ball handling, but a lot of running.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think I built wrong as much as anything. I think if I played the same thing in the current league meta, then I think actually would be the right way to build chaos. But that's a different aside and a different point.
mm,
I sort of got about halfway through the season and I was like, oh, everyone's running past me. These tentacles and tackle abilities might be quite good. Um,
yeah. I
yeah,
think
then, but then,
I think it's a good idea. I think if but perhaps in hindsight, going higher on the anti-tackle and things like that might not might have been the way to build chaos for that instead of just trying to kill. Um,
I think the
yeah,
the other thing that was very interesting last season um, was there were a lot of players with very high that sort of accumulated a lot of TV. Um, I mean, like obviously, like double XP, everyone's going to have more XP, but I tried to keep mine very spread, and I think a lot of the successful teams had like 2 or 3 really key players.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so Thomas's Gutter Runner, for example, great example of that. Matt's Wolves, great examples of that. Tom's Orcs didn't quite have those sort of key things. They were a bit more spread out, but even
Yeah,
they had like 2 or 3 players with like 100 XP or something like that. Um,
yeah. Some of his blitzers got very high, especially towards the end, didn't they?
hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that was a mistake or just how everything fell out. But
Well, it's yeah, sort of it's the idea of min-maxing, isn't it? Trying to keep your TV low by putting all of your upgrades into just a few people, and yeah, certainly did well for some teams. Yeah, it's,
just to run over the positions, we had in 8th
mm,
place we had James, which was a little bit of a surprise. I thought he'd end up doing better. He was not very happy with his roles at the end. He had a bit of a nightmare against Thomas
yeah,
in one of the last games.
yeah.
Uh,
He had some poor luck at key moments, didn't he?
mm.
Mm.
um, then David in 7th, which was a very respectable effort with Vampires.
Yeah, yeah, very well played, sticking with them throughout all of it. I
Yeah,
thought, several points. I thought, well, it's probably time to start a new team, isn't it? And no, he kept ploughing on with them, and he didn't become top solo bottom as well. So yeah,
well,
which looked
yeah,
like it was going to be in the end. So yeah, well done, David. Very well
yeah.
done, David.
Kate finished in 6th, which I think it is her. I think this was her most successful league to date. Uh,
Yeah. She's
um,
some very scary crocs ago. She got
mhm,
some very good double rolling in there, didn't she?
yeah,
Getting
I think it was
block.
a blodging Croxagore.
Yeah, yeah,
Just a bit ridiculous.
yeah.
And she got her first victory over me, which I say not as a congratulations to Kate, although it is, but I think it really annoys Matt that Kate's beaten me and he hasn't yet. Um, then I came in 5th, sort of narrowly missing out on the playoffs. Lachlan came in 4th, and as we mentioned, losing in a pretty crazy quarterfinal against Thomas. In 3rd place in both league position actually and in playoffs was Thomas with his Skaven.
Mm,
We alluded to it earlier, but just the most insane gutter runner.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely insane. Before we move on, let's just looking back at sort of the last few sets of games that both Thomas and I had in terms of rounds at the end of like the last 4 games, both of us had very high scoring. So you can see suddenly where there was a tipping point for the both of our teams, where suddenly every game became a high scoring game. Um, yeah, I wonder if perhaps there was influence for Thomas by him getting by getting quite a lot of movement 10 gutter runners, and
oh,
suddenly having that risk of that one turn touchdown, which he did, he pulled off quite a few times in the end, from what I saw at least. Um, yeah, and you can see it likewise with mine. They all ended up suddenly being very high scoring as we started to get towards the later rounds. prediction of what ended up happening. What ended up happening in our quarterfinal game. Yeah.
And then we ended up with Matt versus Tom in the final. Matt won the quarterfinal eliminator between the two, but Tom then won the semi-final to get back into the final. And it went again. We've joked about this a few times, but the joke beforehand was that Tom can't beat Matt and Matt can't win a final, and it was looking for a long time like that was going to be the case. And I think the pressure actually hold with Matt. I was watching most of the entirety of the last game, and I think Matt felt the pressure to score. He was in a tough position, but but I think Matt felt the pressure to score and possibly score again before extra time and didn't want to leave it there. Like he was 1-0 down. He did need to score at some point, but I felt like he perhaps thought he needed to score twice in regular time and didn't want it to go to extra time. Which
possibly,
is another, and Tom ground out a well-deserved win.
Yeah, he did.
From there, because Tom's finished top of the league twice now and had a pretty good, and was pretty close to a good result in season 2 as well when it was his first one. Thankfully for the other players in the league, in terms of having some players left on the pitch, he's not in season 5, although he will be missed. But there won't be. I was going to say there won't be quite as much touching, but a lot of teams have taken it on them to channel the spirit of Tom.
Yeah, including a Tom tribute band.
Yes. So we have Tom as deserved season 1 winner, and Matt as runner-up, and for the third time, which is impressive in its own right.
Yeah, extremely impressive.
Yeah, Matt wins the most consistent player. Last 3 seasons.
Definitely deserves to win a final at some point soon, doesn't he?
Yeah, just one.
Yeah, just the one.
So with that in mind, should we look ahead at season 5?
Yes. And congratulations to Tom for winning, of course. Winning season 4.
So season 5. Couple of differences. Firstly, we're 10 players again, I think, or possibly for the first time. We had 9 in season 3, but we have 2 divisions. Worth reiterating: everyone plays everyone in their own division twice. Everyone in the other division once, and then everyone has essentially one randomized rival in the other division as well, just to keep the fixtures rolling, essentially. Otherwise, there are a few additional breaks in. We are almost at the end of round 1. We still got 2 teams to pick, but of the teams that are here so far, we have Matt as humans, Thomas as orcs, myself as wood elves, David as dwarves, Lachlan as Norse, Tom Pope as vampires, Mike, who's a new player to the league, as orcs, Kate also as orcs, and we have James as question mark, and we have Andy returning also as question mark.
Tom Pope's the new to us as well.
Yeah, so we've lost a Tom but gained another. And with I guess with last season's winner, Tom is theoretically coming back in season 6, or plans to come back in season 6. We could have a triple Tom league.
We've got to put them all in the same division if we
do.
Yeah,
we'll have Division 1 and Division 2. We'll have a Tom division.
Yeah. There we go.
And the other big difference is we've tweaked the points. So last season it was 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, no points for a loss. This season we copied the rugby union model, which is 4 points for a win, 2 points for a draw, and then there are 2 bonus points available. One if you score 3 or more touchdowns, one if you're within 1 touchdown difference of the winner, so 1-0, 2-1, 3-2, etc. And if you are in a situation like Lachlan was against Thomas last season, where you get a 4-3, you could end up losing but still pick up 2 bonus points in that situation.
Yeah, it certainly benefits close games, and I think it gives if you're feeling a bit demotivated in a game, it's not going your way by it, which, let's face it, it's Blood Bowl, it can happen. It's very high rolling in that regard. It gives you a bit of motivation to crack on and still try and get some points down, try and get a couple of scores, try and prevent the opponent from getting some so they don't get as many points. I think encourages
gives you something to fight for.
Even if everything's and the battle's lost, you can still fight for the war a little bit. Yeah, that kind of thing, isn't it? So yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, we'll see how it is at the end of the season. But it'll be fun to see. Fun to see what happens.
See how it plays out. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Review how it goes obviously at the end if we need to tweak anything or not. But I think in theory it sounds very good. That's why we're doing it.
But before we'll take a look at each team individually in a second, or the ones that have picked.
I
think it's worth pointing out that already, regardless of the last 2 teams which are picked, this is looking like it could be the most punchy season ever.
Oh, that's saying something.
Yeah. Division 1 has 3 dedicated punchy teams, a sort of variety team and a runny team. Division 2 so far has 2 punchy teams and a question mark team. Vampires not bad at actually disrupting a cage against a bashy team. They've got many problems, but maybe it's
maybe it's their time.
Maybe it's their time
for the Vampires. Yeah, maybe Tom's going to get roll less ones than David. If David had just rolled less ones in the last season, you never know. Could have been amazing.
Easy.
So that's all he needs to do.
Should we start with Division 2 and start with Tom's Vampires? Because it seems like a good place to start.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Because this is like first time in the league, and with the exception of Thomas in season 3, basically every player that's joined the league has pretty much come either last or close to last. And Tom Pope has come in and decided that he's going balls to the wall with vampires, only 2 rerolls, and starting off with 5 vampires as well. There's no regrets in this team, at least at this stage.
He's going in guns blazing, isn't he? I think what towards David's obviously our obvious reference here. I think Andrew played a small amount of vampires at the very early seasons, but starting off with 5 vampires, like from all the research I've ever done into vampires, it recommends you starting with around 2 or 3, having a couple of rerolls. That's a lot of vampires coming straight on the pitch. I mean, that first play that you play against this team is going to be quite scary. The first drive. I think he might struggle a bit with the second drive after he's had a few thralls going off, a few vampires disappearing. I think it's bold. It makes a strong statement.
Bold is Tom Pope. Exactly right word for it.
Well, he's saying, "Well, hi, I'm in the league. Here I am." Slap. He's going to smash everyone out of the park with it. I think it's going to be great. Looking forward to it.
And I think he's got Matt as his sort of Division 1 rival, the extra game. Going to be interesting with Matt. I guess the most successful player in the league over the last 2 seasons that's still in this division. You could argue Thomas is the other example of that, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we'll do predictions later, but like, geez, that's a hell of an entrance.
Yep.
Then we've got. Should we keep going with new players for Mike?
Yep, Mike.
In
Come
fact,
with
yeah,
the
as we're on the sheet, we'll go right to left. I think that seems to make sense. Along the
Sure.
tabs. So Mike's gone for Orcs. I think
Yep.
he's gone for what I'd call the sort of the classic Orc build: 4 Black Orcs, 4 Blitzers, 3 rerolls, and then sort of season to taste. So 2 linemen and a thrower. We're going to be looking at a few Orc teams. I'm curious to see what the differences are. But this is the no troll build, which I think is the right thing for Orcs.
I think it's the safe way of starting with an attritional team. Yeah, I think it's. I've never played them, but it looks correct to me. I think the choice is whether to save the money of upgrading a lineman to a thrower or not, and he's chosen to do it. I think that's the main query, isn't it, when it comes to it, or going with the troll and goblin. But yeah, obviously that's a lot more high rolly.
I think you can make a really good argument for the troll in this league, given that there are 2 other Orc players from your point of view. So there are people with equal muscle.
It's consistency over an additional strength and mighty blow. Yeah, I think there is a good argument to having it just to leave on the line of scrimmage, maybe. Yeah, it's a good argument for it, but yeah, it's yeah, I think Mike's picked the safe play, and I think it's if this was a even more competitive environment, it would be the correct choice.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like Shake, Spike, and Dickens as well.
Yeah, he's got some cracking names.
Then we have Andrew, who doesn't have a team in yet. So we can only assume that Andy likes to play something weird and crazy.
Yeah,
I reckon there's like a 50% chance of ogres coming out. But we'll have to see. Do you want to take a prediction for Andy's team?
I wouldn't be surprised if he went along the lines of picking, say, sort of like Dark Elves or something. I think I recollect him even mentioning being interested in them. So far, like I distinctly remember him picking Bretonnia. No one else has ever done that. He was the first person to pick up vampires. Yeah, he likes doing something a little bit different. But I don't know. I think people mostly have decided to go quite serious in this league following following some of the shenanigans of the last few. But yeah, I imagine he's going to go on a slightly more serious route this time, I reckon. Yeah, probably something like Dark Elves, I reckon he'll do.
There. We've got James next, who, despite me badgering repeatedly over the last time I saw him, hasn't picked a team yet. So I apologise for badgering you, James. I basically just wanted it in for the podcast. He was joking that because he'd had to drop out of playing twice, he was going to have to be a team that dropped the ball a lot. So I think Kemmery was exactly what I was thinking. But there's a few options. I would like to see James play as a bashy team. He was undead in season 2, which you can make an argument whether they're a bashy team or a running team.
Hybrid, aren't they?
Yeah, they're a bit more, they're kind of the definition of mid range.
Yeah. And then he did a running team obviously last season. Yeah, he could pick anything. I mean, if he's gonna pick a bashy team, though, it has to be very bashy. Considering obviously we've got a lot of armor in this season. You either need to be able to claw through armor or dodge away from everything. So yeah,
or just be like, cool, I'm gonna meet fire with fire. Could be something like I think I was recommending possibility of something like Chaos Dwarfs to him, but
I think that'd be a good actually. If you get a couple of claw bombs going.
They're just more like, I'm just going to take everything you've got and enjoy it. But there's a few teams that could do that. So next up we have Kate.
Yeah.
And Kate has, as near as makes no difference, the exact same lineup as Andy. So Orcs again, 4 blitzers, 2 linemen, a thrower, 4 black Orcs, 3 rerolls. It's after the first game, so Kate has an apothecary and assistant coach. I'm not sure if she had. I don't think she could have had the apothecary before, but she might have had the assistant coach before.
I think she did, yeah. Yeah, because that was the game that we played. My first game already against her. Yeah, again, yeah, I think it's the correct starting way to build orcs. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's got
and
miss next game already on a black orc. That's gonna be painful. That's I think
and
that was in the
who's got the
very
best
first
team is
2
always a
turns.
very competitive field. I think Kate always goes in a slightly different direction to everyone else's team names. And I think I like the Kate's done what Kate's done with the Orcs and have them as My Little Pony references.
Yeah, fantastic.
So Kate gets my vote this season for best team name. But there are a lot of good contenders.
Yeah, great to know. Yeah, looking forward to seeing how she goes. Obviously, orcs are slow and steady, attrition all the way. So yeah, I think it suits Kate's playing style quite a lot as well. So yeah, excited to see how she gets along with this season. Yeah.
So going from for still a Bashy team, but the most unique of the Bashy teams, I'd argue, we have your team, and it's a return to Norse for you.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. That I've always wanted to sort of go back to Norse. The first team, I think it's season 2 or season 1, a very early season when I played them. Season 2, yeah, I had a lot of fun with them. They've just got really interesting positionals, really. Yeah, and obviously Frenzy's great fun, but I've always wanted to go back to them now. I understand the game a bit better, and I actually understand that Frenzy is for more than just trying to hit a person twice. So yeah, decided to go back to them. They've got so many options and starting up lineups as well. I found it quite hard to land on the one that I did. I've definitely gone with the greedy lineup where I have very few re-rolls and I'm all in on all the positionals right from the start. Yeah, a lot of fun, but I'm a bit worried with the amount of orc teams there are, because whilst I'm a bashy team, Norse like to punch, they don't like to be punched, and I've got a feeling that I'm going to get punched a lot. Everyone's got a much higher armor value than me, so it's going to go.
It's going to be really interesting to see how you do specifically against all the other bashy teams.
Yeah, definitely.
You've gone 2 reroll route, and then you've gone Yeti, 2 Offwen, 2 Berserkers, a runner, and 5 linemen, 6 linemen.
Yeah, it's 5 linemen for the time being. Yeah, just I had to go for the Yeti in the end because the amount of armor that's getting involved. Yeti has a claw, which is lovely. Probably shouldn't be telling people this, but yeah, Yeti has claw, so I decided to pick him up, try and get through some of the armor that's going around the place. Yeah, it's fun.
It's a nice bit of tech there, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the only tech that I really can have against armor as well, so I'll take it from the start. Not that it's done much good thus far, but still, only one game in.
Then we have Thomas, who's come in with Orcs. And stop me if you've heard this one before, but there are 4 blitzers, 4 black Orcs, 3 linemen, no thrower, and 3 rerolls.
Decided not to go for the thrower this time. Hey, there's
the thrower just as a Hail Mary option. Not in terms of the skill, but just in terms of you need to score a 2-turn touchdown as Orcs or something. But I can utterly see why you don't pick it. It's not something I normally focus on, but it's the only real point difference between the other lists.
He's got a bit more money in the bank, I suppose, or a bit less team value, which as you go on might prove to be vital. He might manage to, if he decides to go for a troll, he can get that sooner than the others on average rolls at least. So yeah, a bit more flexibility down the line, and you never know. He may even be able to play the TV game, but perhaps as Orcs, that's not the direction you want to be going. If you're playing the TV game as Orcs, I think something's probably gone wrong, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that Thomas's team name is the Tom Tribute Band. That is not in tribute to himself or Tom Pope, but to the Tom that's not here. So again, some more great team names, all of which are Tom something. Tomothy, Thomas Worth, Tomilton, etc. Then we have Matt, who's disappointed everyone by not picking halflings. But at least has a fun team theming as well. Matt's gone with humans and has gone 1 ogre, 4 blitzers, 4 linemen, 1 catcher, 1 thrower.
Yeah, the definition of a hybrid team. And he's managed to change all of his number thumbnails to people, pictures of people. That's very creative.
Pictures of hues.
Yeah, pictures of different hues. Fantastic team names. I actually think that humans are going to do really well. We've never seen them before in any of the leagues. I think they've got a bit of reputation for being vanilla, and that's their sort of the comparison point off for most teams in terms of whether they then go more bashy or not. People sort of quite often whenever I've sort of read an online playbook or anything, everyone seems to relate lineman to the human lineman. But I think humans have some really good stats. They're obviously hybrid, but they've got a surprising amount of armor. Their blitzers are well kitted out. They've got sort of a standard big guy. I think as hybrid teams go, they have more flexibility than any of the others. And I think that I can see them doing very well actually. And I think coming off Necromantic, which is technically a hybrid team as well, but with a slight bashing edge to it, I think Matt's in a good position to play a team such as humans. Dare I say it? May he get through a final as the victor this time? Maybe.
You're a brave person to call that.
Or hopefully jinx it. Maybe I'll jinx it.
I don't think you could jinx it more than it already. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because 4 blitzers on a team, and especially when they're as good as human blitzers, is really powerful. The ogre's great against the orcs, as you said, and then he's just got that little bit of tech with a catcher thrower, which probably aren't going to be cool. But yeah, it just gives you the chance when you're like, cool, I've got to make something happen.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it means that you can try and do some vanity passing, perhaps early game as well. Get some extra SSPs on people. Yeah, just do a bit like that. Yeah, I think
probably it's probably like the hardest team out of all of these, I'd say, to like cool as to how well it's going to do. I think, at least in my opinion, because it's the one where you can give it advantages and disadvantages against every team. So getting the right sort of game plan in place is going to be very interesting for Matt. But
be fun to watch.
Yeah,
definitely fun to watch.
I mean, Matt's always fun to watch because he's consistently always been one of the highest scoring teams. You look at we've got to think of a way to differentiate the Tom. I guess we can have champion Tom, previous champion Tom, and new Tom.
New Tom. Vampire Tom.
Vampire Tom. That's it. That's a better one.
Vampire Tom.
But if we have champion Orc Tom, for comparison, I think all of his games will look 1-0 or 1-0. Like Matt's teams are almost never in that sort of bracket. So yeah, very, very curious to see how they'll do. Speaking of not wanting to win 1-0, we've got my team as Wood Elves. I'm like, dear Lord, it is expensive. I hate not having 3 rerolls, but I needed to get some players. So I had to go with this 2.
Expensive.
And I went with what have I got? 8 linemen, 1 catcher, kind of because I had some gold left over, and a treeman and a war dancer. The treeman is there because basically to be an apothecary. Because if he's getting punched and a lineman isn't getting punched, it's my fault. Well, that's basically the same thing.
They've got like armor 10, don't they?
Yeah,
Treemen,
which is
so very hard to knock off the pitch, aren't they?
yeah, unless you're say a Yeti with claw.
Even so, yeah, we still
I
need
think,
to get through that armor first.
and then there's
Yeah.
a war dancer, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, war dancers starting off with blodge and leap,
Yeah.
casual blodge straight from the start.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of,
Disgusting.
if not the best players in the game.
Do they get
and
access to everything? Do they get agility and strength?
strength is a double.
Strength's a double. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
The elves have no. Well, wood elves have no regular access to strength.
strength. I don't think any of the elves do actually.
No, I feel like dark elves might on the blitzers, but I don't think they do.
I don't think they do actually.
If
looking into
anyone
the-
does, it's
yeah.
them. But
I don't think. Yeah. I think
yeah,
that's why
I
they
recall.
get the
I recall having a guard on mine, but I think that was just I got a double and it ran around with it in season 1. Although I barely count season 1 as a season, given how sort of unique it was.
Yeah, but yeah, Wood Elves widely regarded online at least as being one of the higher tiers. You're obviously in a season where you're going to be trying to abuse that agility 4. Not that, well, that's what you do anyway as elves, but particularly so you're trying to avoid. It's a very
I am so
punchable
outpunched
thing.
by everyone.
But in the league and in your division as well, it's yeah, everyone outpunches you so far. Yeah, so enjoy that. You've got a lot of armor 7 as well, don't
Yep.
you? A lot of movement 7. Yeah, I think that it's going to be the movement is the key thing because obviously there's a lot of orcs. Orcs are very slow, and you're the opposite. You're extremely fast.
Yeah, I'm
So,
playing a very
that's gonna
different
be
game plan to orcs, so
yeah.
I'll have to see how that works.
I think it's going to be quite polarizing.
And then as a final bashy team, we have David, who after having a couple of after having gone from vampires, has gone from the least reliable team in the game to the most reliable team in the game in dwarves.
Yeah, I'm a bit scared of David this season. We've seen for some previous seasons that when David has had more serious teams, perhaps higher tier teams is probably the correct way of saying it. But he's been very scary. I've been very nervous playing against him. Recollecting from very early when he's playing as Nurgle and he's got pestigores going around and inside your lines that you just can't seem to stop. And yeah, he did similarly with gutter runners when he ended up being Skaven. I think David is always one to watch. Very good at getting around your line and harassing your people, harassing your defensive line at least. Yeah, I think obviously dwarves aren't nearly that mobile, but I think perhaps
they're not that much less mobile than most of the other teams, though.
That is true.
But just to run through his team quickly. 2 runners, 2 blitzers, 2 troll slayers. Would have been 5 longbeards. One of them has amazingly died.
Shit luck.
So 4 longbeards on the roster at time of recording, but at least the one that died didn't have any skills apart from the 3 that they come with base. But yeah, it's a really nice rounded roster.
Yeah.
He does have 4 players, I think, which are movement 6, the blitzers and the runners. Blitzers might still be 5, actually, now I think about it.
I think blitzers are 5, the runners are 6.
But in that sort of quite iconic sort of orc versus dwarf game, one of the kind of typical sort of grudge matches of Warhammer Fantasy and Blood Bowl. There's a chance he might actually have the quickest players on the pitch.
He's equal with some
Oh
of the
yeah,
Orc players, isn't he?
yeah. And
Both very high armor, both wanting to be
yeah,
in combat.
that's going
Yeah,
to
I
be
think.
it's going to be some grindy games.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'll be fun to watch one of maybe. Let's see how they go. Yeah, 2 Troll Slayers though. I think that's the interesting thing. Yeah, two Frenzy Dauntless on the team.
There's going to be some turnovers there,
Yeah,
and
well,
there's going to be some pretty incredible plays.
it's gonna
And
be it's gonna be
David's
fun.
mentioned as well that he really wants to get the I forgot what it's called. I want to say the Juggernaut, but
What the Death Roller, whatever it
that's the
is.
one. Yeah.
Yeah,
And in a Bashi league,
that'd be
someone
great
with strength 7 on that line of scrimmage
to literally
with a
roll
couple of
over.
dwarves either side, probably with guard and possibly something like stand firm. That
It's
is
gonna
going to
be
be tough to
dirty.
move through, and
It's
that
gonna
is
be
going to be a
dirty that game.
hell of a sort of wedge of a cage as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think David's gonna do fairly well overall. Yeah, obviously he's had a first game against you, and it looks like you just ran away with it, literally.
Well, should we very quickly go for the round 1 results, and we'll go to the preview. So,
Yeah, sure.
3 games so far. Matt versus Thomas. Thomas won 2-0. I didn't see the game. I'm assuming that Matt was so traumatized by playing Orcs for a 7th game in the row or something like that. That he just couldn't handle it.
Especially considering it was dedicated to the team that he's just played repeatedly as well.
Yes. So I'm assuming that's what happened there. Me v David, basically said I got 2 really good early kickoff results. I had one of those things where I kicked the ball deep into David's line, like sort of 4 or 5 from the back, and then got the one where I got a blitz and my catcher just ran up and caught the ball about 5 squares from David end zone. It's like, cool. And then they had a sort of perfect defense one where, it just again fucked over David, and I was like, I'm 2-0 up by half time with having kicked off to David, and then traded the thing in the second half, and that was that.
1-1 from there.
Yeah, it was noticeable that when we actually played a half where David got the ball, he just annihilated his way through my lines. I could do nothing about it, but the game was over by that stage.
Shows promise for later, though, doesn't it?
It's promise for later and scary for me. And there's when there's an actual fair contest, it didn't go well. But how about your game versus Kate?
I think in my game v Kate, I think it was quite noticeable that I was familiar with my team, having obviously played them for a season before, and I think it was Kate's first ever game as Orcs. So yeah, I think that was sort of the driving factor between us, and then ended up getting a relatively comfortable 2-0 against her. Yeah, I think it was down to experience with the teams with that one. So yeah, it's all right. Nice to have a win at the start, though. It feels
Yeah.
good.
We've currently got no one with a losing bonus point. And we've got one person, myself, with a 3
additional
3 touchdown bonus point. It'd be interesting to see how that goes, because you don't want the 3 touchdown one every game. Is one of the big things to keep an eye on, I think. And I don't think it's likely to come up that often, looking back at previous results. But unless you're Thomas Escaven in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks of season 4 and double XP, where it's just like, he scored 3 tries and still lost. You're like, how?
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one as we go. Yeah, as we say, I think it's a difficult season to judge whether that 3-3 scoring thing as well, because we've got a fair amount of relatively slow teams in this season as well. Which, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Should we start with our league season predictions? And should we go should we go and see? Should we start in Division 2?
Yeah, sure
And
thing.
there's going to be two real big question marks here that neither of us know who Andrew and James are going to play, which is a massive impact on where they will probably finish.
Yeah, I'd say we have 4 question marks there because Andrew and James haven't picked a team yet, so it's hard to judge based off that. Andrew's missed a season, and then Vampire Tom and Mike obviously are brand new, so it's hard to judge with that as well. The other one we've got is Kate, Kate and the Rorks. Yeah.
So starting 5th and work our way up. Who do you think is coming bottom?
My dice says number 3, so my dice is saying it's going to be Mike.
It's a good way to do predictions, Lachlan. I'm going to say Tom Pope last. He's new players have kind of, as I said, have always typically struggled, and he's playing vampires. Like that is a hell of a thing to overcome.
I think being sensible, I think it may well be the vampire team. Well, yeah, we'll see how that goes. We'll just say for Tom and Mike's benefit, if they do listen to this, that you are allowed to reset your team and start with a brand new, fresh team at some stage if you're not liking your team. Well, yeah, obviously not in the middle of a match, but yeah.
My team's dead. I have a new team for the second half.
Yeah. So I think it was you, Euan, as well that refreshed you. Got a brand new team after a particularly poor first game as well. And ended up doing
I
very
drew
well
against champion Orc Toms before he was champion Orc, but he was an Orc team back then against Kislev, and I lost 2 players I think and drew, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna reset and went for Chaos Dwarves and ended up winning in that season. Last time I won, so. Clearly, what I should do now is reset my team to Chaos Dwarves after round 1.
Yeah, so if either of your first games don't go the way you like, or you're not happy with your team or whatever, you can reset it from your game 2, or before your first game even. But I have to agree. I think Tom, unfortunately, because it's such a high rolly team, and he started off with nearly the maximum amount of vampires you're possible to field. I think that's likely to be on the lower end of it, if not bottom. So 4th. Who do you reckon's 4th?
I'm going to put Mike as 4th, just because he's the one person one of 2 people I haven't seen play, and again, going by the logic there, if new players have typically struggled, he's got a very strong team. And it's always hard to say, but it's my sort of theory that if it's a new player, I'm putting them near the bottom, so putting Mike down as 4th.
Fair enough. Yeah.
We should point out, if Mike and Tom are listening, I said the same thing about Thomas in season 3, and he won the league that season. So don't take it personally if we rank you low. These are just guesses.
I think the rest of them are quite hard to judge. Andrew's obviously a returning player, but he's had some quite scary things going on in the past. James is very good player, and Kate again, very good player. So I think it's quite hard to judge between the rest of them in that league. What's going to occur? If what you say in terms of new players coming in is true, but then perhaps Mike might be slightly lower down that just because he's less familiar with the game, perhaps, or otherwise. But I do recollect playing against sort of like early Matt as well, and thinking, oh god, he's actually quite scary when he came along for someone that was playing sort of his first sets of games as well. So we can be proven wrong very quickly with that as well. So
who's your actual pick for 4th then?
Player 2, so it's Andrew.
Oh, so you're putting Andy at 4? Okay.
That's what the dice roll said, yes.
Just, you can put it's much easier, sitting on the fence all this time, isn't it? And then when you actually got to make a prediction, it's like, oh yeah, this is tough.
I honestly don't know with the rest of this division. I think vampires, the team leads itself to being on the lower end. I think orcs are both very consistent. We just can't say in terms of what's going to happen with Andrew and James because they haven't picked a team.
Okay. Shall I just do my predictions for Division 2 and you can sit on the fence till season 1?
I'll sit on the fence. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll sit on the fence.
So third, I'm going to pick Andy, and I'm going to pick Andy as the same reason that I picked him to not get into the quarterfinals or whatever it was in season 3, where I'm worried that he's going to have to forfeit a game at some point with scheduling because I know he's got problems with that. Always had challenges with that in the past. Then James and Kate is very close for who's going to finish top. I think Kate's been doing quite well, so I'll go James to second, and Kate's top, which would mean James and Andy play each other for a chance to play someone in Division 1 for a chance to be promoted, and Kate would have the option of being promoted and the chance to go through to the quarterfinal, semi-final with everyone else.
Nice.
Division 1 then.
Division 1, yeah. So
look,
fifth. I have to say, looking at the teams and what people are picking, I would be inclined to put human as a race. So Matt on the bottom of the pile there.
Sorry, I'll let finish.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be really interesting. I think it really depends on whether he gets good dice rolls or not in terms of getting some extra strength here and there. I think if that occurs, then suddenly the humans are going to be able to play against the bashy teams a bit better. But as it stands at the moment, I think as an overall, whilst they are sort of jack of all trades, I think the master of none aspect might just get the better of them in the long run. So I think I'd put humans at the bottom for Division 1.
I agree. I also think maybe Matt's got a bit of orc shell shock, which is kind of funny in the sense that I think Matt lost in the whole of last season. Matt lost 2 games. Only actually one of those was against orcs. So it's pretty crazy that we're like, most consistent player. Going to end up as the bottom, but there's a lot of muscle to overcome. Which would mean Matt would be in the relegation spot. Fourth then.
Fourth, I think I have to put myself down there based on my armor value. I think the bottom 2 is going to be sort of Norse and humans. I think they're going to get bashed too hard. I think that I will start. I think I'll have a good running start, and then I think I'll start getting injuries sort of along the place, which will hold me back. So yeah, I'll put myself as fourth based on armor value for that.
Okay. I'm going to put David as fourth. I don't want to be like controversial, but I think whoever you put as fifth and fourth is going to be controversial. Because sort of by definition, the Division 1 players are the ones that have been successful. So saying the least successful out of them is always going to be tough, and we're. But yeah, I think dwarves might have the issue where I think orcs might just beat them up in a toe-to-toe fight, and they don't have the same plan B as specifically someone like Norse. So it doesn't leave them with a lot of options. Orcs can just about get a plan B if dwarves get on top as well, especially with like goblin shenanigans, or just troll.
Which Thomas may well end up having. Well, potentially.
And it may be that the Death Roller wildly changes the maths and all of that. but I think it's going to be a really tough start for David, and maybe in that sort of mid-late point he'll start smashing teams. But yeah, that's why I'm putting him at 4.
Fair enough.
And David and Matt can both feel very hard done by that we've put them there, I think.
Both very good players, obviously. Yeah. All right, third then.
Yep.
Third.
The third, I think.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
Tough one, eh? I think that I'm going to put for my third choice. I'm going to put Tom's Orcs. I think obviously they're very consistent, but with the amount of Orcs that there are, I've got a feeling that people are going to be able to, at some stage in the later stages, start attacking slightly against them, or at least start getting used to their tactics a little bit. So I think on that basis, yeah, I'll put Orcs as third. I think they're going to do well, and then sort of as things get a bit later on, people are going to be overly familiar with Orcs, and I've teched a little bit against them. So I think he'll do well, but just fall off the top spots, just on that basis. Yeah. So I'd put Orcs as third for me.
I am really coin flipping here, and it's between Wood Elves and Norse. I'll be slightly pessimistic and put myself as third. I just think there's so much punching. There's going to be some point in this is regular season as well. I think when you get into playoffs, the maths is a bit different. But there's going to be there's so much punching, and there's so many chances for my team to disintegrate at some point and have a couple of games where I'm missing players and what have you.
Yeah, you will have that.
So I think I'll put myself third here, but still a real contender come quarterfinals and things.
Yeah.
Which is the same thing I think I said about Matt in season 2 or 3 whenever he was Wood Elves.
Yeah.
Very dangerous when it comes to the playoffs, but there'll be a point in the season where the team gets obliterated and they have to spend a sort of week or two just getting bodies back together.
Yeah, that may well end up happening. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the worst thing if it does occur, though. Depends who gets killed or has to get fired or similar. I think that'll be the main thing. But yeah, obviously you've got low armor on Wood Elves, and they're expensive to replace. But when you do eventually replace them, keep your TV sort of relatively lowish, so you can sort of min-max a little bit, have a focus on a few people, which obviously is going to be your War Dancer. I think if it's your War Dancer which goes, which obviously he has a target on his back, if he goes, I think that'll slow you down a heck of a lot if that happens. And for me, as we're moving on to it, I would put yourself as second on a similar basis. That I think that you might just have a few games where you just get punched a little bit too much. I think you've got Wood Elves have enough mobility that they're just going to be able to sprint past, and a lot of these teams, if you just get past their front line and start sprinting down the field, it's going to be hard to stop that momentum. I think Wood Elves are very good at doing that. But yeah, if you lose a couple of players at some stage, I think it'll put you back quite a long way. I think you're going to do very well, but especially being yourself playing as them as well. But yeah, I think perhaps just lose out on the top podium spot. So yeah, pop Wood Elves at second.
So second, I'm going to put Norse. I actually think you'll be favourite to win in the finals. But similar problem to Elves in that there's a good chance that some point in the season they lose a couple of people either permanently or they take some big injuries. I remember you had that problem in season 2 when you were Norse last time.
Yeah. Can happen.
But conversely, it's your advantage that it's your second time with this team in the league, so you're more familiar with them. You can go to toe for a while with Orcs, and especially if you're the one dealing out the punches, you can certainly live in that area. and you've got a lot more plan B than a lot of the other teams. You've got the option of the runner, and you are slightly quicker. So if the punching isn't working, you can play another game. It's not one you want to play, but you can keep in the fight for long enough to play something else, which I think in a final meta gives you a real advantage. But over the course of the season, I think the injuries might, in the same way that I put myself in third, but with the chance of playoffs, I think the Norse have that. And I think the advantage is that if people do end up teching for orcs,
They're not taking for us.
partly that, but partly Norse can sort of keep good pace with teams like elves, and theoretically, if James and Andrew pick sort of quicker teams as well, Norse aren't a slow team. We're not a quick team, but they've got they don't have the disadvantage in speed to keep up with them, and they're still very punchy. So put them there.
Nice.
So last time I think we did this. I think actually most times we've done this, and by that I mean the people on the podcast have been pretty unanimous with their 1 and 2, but we've got quite different things.
Yeah, we do.
So
yeah,
I'll go first.
Right.
So I've got Thomas as Orc as finishing top. Thomas is a very good player and a very brutal player when he wants to be. There'll be a little bit of adjustment going from Skaven to Orcs.
Yes.
But like he won the league last time with Lizardman, when he was Lizardman. Orcs have certainly a lot of similarities in terms of punching, and that was what that team did best. So I am very worried about what Thomas is going to be doing this season with the Tom Tribute band, and I think he's just gonna try and put people in an arm wrestle time and time again, and that pressure is going to tell time and time again very quickly, I think.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. The fact that he has got some experience with strength 4s as well, sort of as a baseline. He will be scary. Yeah, I can see the merit of you putting him in top for that. I've gone for David's dwarves for the top podium spot on this occasion. I think he's just going to win out long run in the war of attrition. I think the second he starts getting some guards down, which he can then spam everywhere, I think that's going to really tell. And I think that thick skull is going to be in a war of attrition. Just give him that extra edge that orcs perhaps won't have, and some of the others won't have. I think in the long term, I think dwarves are just going to get momentum and not be able to stop them. I think in what's looking to my eyes at least going to be a war of attrition in the long run, they win out on it. I think historically people with high armor tend to do very well. High armor with less chance of being KO'd as well. That's the final factor for me, I think. Yeah. David coming back with a vengeance.
Yeah, it's two interesting actually points in the finals. Apart from season 1, the punchiest team has won each time. And it was actually interesting seeing season 4, both teams at the end being like, cool, we're going to fire everyone and really reduce our team value at the end. Whereas in the previous season, I remember when it wasn't actually a final, but it was a quarterfinal. Me and Dave were like, oh, we'll spend all our gold and get loads of random stuff. There's an interesting little sort of sub meta each time when you get 2 players and what each of them are trying to do.
Yeah.
But we finish it off with a couple of quick predictions in sort of rounds 1, 2, 3, 4 games.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
So,
we've obviously seen.
We're going to make these These are going to be really quick because I think let's not predict on any games with Andrew or James because we don't know their team. Which means we can skip the rest of round 1. Yep. And we typically don't predict on our own games. So these could be kind of quick, especially one of the games in round 2. But Thomas versus David. Orcs versus dwarves.
Citadel.
I think going with what I said earlier, I'm going to have to back Thomas at this stage, especially with David being down a player.
Yeah, what's his down player? He'll get a lineman for it, obviously. So I think that's just going to be a 1-1 draw. I think that's going to be a bashy game. I think they're going to both score on their pushing, and that'll be it.
What 1-0 to Thomas in my book. Then we have you versus me, which neither of us can predict. But we have Matt versus Tom Pope. I bet. I think Matt is probably quite strong favourite to win that.
Yeah, sorry, new Tom. Yeah, we're familiar with Matt's play. He was in the final, I think. Yeah,
I think that could be 2-0, 3-1 to Matt.
Something like that. Yeah, along those lines. We've got Andrew versus James. Can't comment because neither of them have a team yet.
Just going off previous players with question mark teams, I'm going to back Andrew to win that one. Don't know what team he's going to pick, but yeah, I just feel like Andrew's going to come in and be like, yes, I've got this.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have Kate versus Mike. This is impossible to get to all players.
Coin flip.
Yeah, and this is a brotherly or brotherly sister fight as well. So we've got quite a few of those now. So we've got the David Matt fight, the you me fight, and the Kate Mike fight. And I guess it must be Andrew Mike Kate as well.
And then Tom v Tom. Familiar?
Yeah, we've got the Tom fight.
Everyone guessing.
So we need James to have a brother, or James does have a brother to get them involved, or a sister. James, what we're saying is we need some of your family in the Blood Bowl League so that you can fight them.
Whose dad was going to join at one point? Someone's dad was going to at one stage.
That was Champion Orc Tom.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I don't think they realised how long it was.
Yeah,
we had our brother Hal was briefly interested for a point. I think we always knew it was going to be unlikely, but we got him playing for a while. So round 3, we have Matt versus Euan.
That's a bit. I can predict something from that, can't I? Human versus Wood Elf. I don't think humans are going to be specialised enough to play against Wood Elf yet at that point, although they will have a bit more block. I think as an overall, I'll probably put my money on Wood Elves, I'm afraid. Sorry, Matt. Yeah, put my money on you for that one, probably.
Fair. I'm not going to complain. I mean, I'd rather get the game result than the prediction, to be fair. But David Lachlan. I think that goes to Lachlan. Just because Lachlan's got a speed advantage. David's got the attrition advantage, but I think Norse can hang in there for long enough to make the speed count. Andrew Thomas, we're going to put as a question mark. I think Thomas has had a hell of a record, so I think it's going to be a real tough battle for Andrew for that, but it is very dependent on what team Andrew picks there, I think.
Yes, agreed. Yep.
Tom Pope versus Mike, the two newbies to the league playing out. I think I have to give that a sort of 2-0 to Mike just based on Orcs versus Vampires.
Yeah, I'll be inclined to agree. Vampires, if they get going, I reckon they're going to be phenomenal. But I think perhaps a very high vampire ratio, at least in what we're looking at the moment. So I think, yeah, I'd put my money on Orcs beating Vampires. Yeah.
Then we have James with his question mark team versus Kate.
So, yep.
Then let's have a look at round 4. So we got the Matt David grudge match. They're brothers, and I always think this is one of the hardest games to call. So I always feel like whoever's doing worse tends to upset and win that one. But I normally back Matt in this matchup, so I think I'm gonna back David this time.
Fair enough. That seems like a fair choice. I think that humans might just be able to run away from dwarves. I think, yeah, I think it's going to end up being a close game. With just the edge on humans for it, just to be able to run away with it ever so slightly more than dwarves can. So
The
yeah,
more, the
yeah,
more
I
you're
think
saying it, the more I'm regretting my choice, especially as Matt has just a habit of scoring touchdowns against anyone, and dwarfs do struggle to come back after that happens. So, but I'll stick with it. 1-0 to David. David's defense is going to be perfect that game.
yeah, it does.
Then we've got you versus Thomas. One of the heavyweight clashes in the division. I guess I got to back what I. Do I have to back what I said earlier? I
Don't
backed Thomas's
necessarily.
higher. I think Thomas is just going to edge that. I don't know. I'm going to predict draw.
It's going to be a tough matchup. I think it's going to be hard to say, to be honest.
I'm going to say draw on that. I'm going to.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Leave you, Mike.
Can't really say, but from what I know that you're a pretty gross player to play against, Euan, with all due respect, as a compliment, if anything. Yeah, I'll put my money on you probably for that.
Fair. It's going to be when you get something like Wood Elf versus Orc as a matchup. It is whoever gets their game plan and play for longer.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be wanting to punch out the Orcs, and the Orcs aren't going to be trying to run past me. So it's that complete clash of game plans.
Whoever gets choice on kickoff, I think that makes a big impact on the rest of the game, particularly for that matchup.
And then we have the Tom Pope versus James. Again, we don't know what team James is picking, but unless it's something like Ogres, he probably goes in as favourite. And if James goes in as Ogres, then all fair play to him. Don't actually think it would be the worst.
James pick up the halfling team that Matt didn't. If
there is a league to play Ogres, it might be this one with all the Orcs around.
It might be. Perhaps you can swindle it to get one halfling and one ogre team in for the last two choices. Certainly make things interesting.
Yeah. And then we've got Andrew versus Kate, where Andrew could be anything.
Yeah.
And that's another grudge match where you're never quite sure who's gonna win that one.
Andrew versus Kate, yeah. Well, best of luck to all of them. Yeah. All right then.
Should we wrap it up there then?
Yeah, wrap it up there. Wow.
Anything else you want to call out or anything?
No, that's the lot. That's us done. Blood
bow.